Hi, my name is Massimiliano Gori, and I'm a security product manager at Canonical. At the end of last year, Microsoft released Intune for Linux with Ubuntu as their first target platform. As part of today's video, we are going to go over what is Intune and why should you use it, how to install it and complete the initial setup, how to configure a default compliance policy, and then how to configure the custom compliance policy to check arbitrary configuration, like for example, the status of Ubuntu Pro or running services. You can find more information on Microsoft documentation, which will be linked in the description below. So what is Intune and why should you use it? Thanks to the COVID pandemic, and especially in the past couple of years, companies have been moving more and more into the cloud and adopting more cloud services. The same is applying to the management plane for endpoints. Intune is the Microsoft MDM solution, and it is used to, it comes as part of the Microsoft 365 compliance suite, and it is used to evaluate the compliance status of an endpoint in regards to certain policies and best practices. The output of this policy check can enable clients to perform conditional access decision for resources that are protected by Azure AD, like for example, Office or any other on-premise and cloud application that is configured with the directory. Let's now start our demo. So the first thing that we need to do is actually install Intune, and we will do that after adding the Intune, the Microsoft API. Now, it is important to, as we perform the installation, it is important to remember that Intune has a couple of dependencies, which you can find on the Microsoft documentation and website, the most important of which is actually Microsoft Edge. And Microsoft Edge is also the browser that will enable to actually extract the full potential from Intune and apply the more advanced compliance policies. Intune has now been installed, and we will be able to find it into our dock. So we can launch the application, and it will ask us to sign in. In order to sign in, we need to have a valid Microsoft account with a license assigned. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll open a browser window, which will then ask for our password or complete the authentication flow that you have configured in your tenant. Put my password, and then we will need to register our device. And this is effectively what we'll be able to have the device appear in the Cloud Console. Now, we can see that the device has been registered, and Intune is downloading initial configuration. We will now enroll the device. And at the end of it, you can see that our machine has been successfully recognized. In this case, we're using a virtual machine. And when the agent is first installed, it will do a compliance status. Now, we expect this compliance status to return a compliance check, as we see right here. It's because we haven't configured any compliance policy yet. The output of that might actually vary depending on your specific environment. Now here we will see some information about the device, and also we will get a button to refresh the status. More on that later as we configure the policies. It's important to note that the frequency at which the compliance status is evaluated depends on the life cycle of the device. This can be performed manually by the user or the administrator, or otherwise it will happen at time intervals that depends on the information available about the device. Newly added devices will be subject to more frequent compliance statuses, and as the device as the cloud gets more information about the device, the frequency of those checks will gradually reduce. So let's actually go right now to Intune, the Intune Admin Center, and let's actually check whether the device appears on the tenant. So we need to go on Devices, Linux, and then we hit refresh. So the device has now been added, and we can click on it to actually get more information about the properties, the user, and some other content. As well as we can retire it or permanently delete it, meaning that the device will never be able to access any Azure AD protected device. So let's now go back and configure our first policy. What we want to do is configure a password policy. So let's go on password policies and let's click on new policy. Create, give it a name, and we can call it password strength. So I have currently configured a number-only password on the device, and now we will try to enforce, for example, that we need to have at least one character in the password. So as you can see, there are a couple of standard policies. The list may vary depending on the time when you see this video, as Microsoft and ourselves are working to add more and more default policies. Allow distribution allows to check whether you are running a specific version of Ubuntu. Right now, at the time of this video, 20.04 and 22.04 are the supported distribution. Custom compliance is something that we will look in the second part of this video. Device encryption will check whether a certain partition or the entire OS are encrypted. And finally, the password policy, which is the one that we are going to configure. So as I said, I want to add a symbol. And so you can put minimum number of signals. Close this, and we can set this property to 1. Click on next. And right here, we are marking the device as not compliant as soon as the compliance check is run. But we can also tell the system to send an email to the user to remind him or her about the need to apply certain specific actions to make the device compliant. Click on next. Now let's add it to users, all devices. Next, we can review the configuration. And once we're happy, we can click on create. Now we can see the policy created here. And this will take a couple of minutes to actually reach all of your devices. While we do that, let's actually have a look at how we can use Intune to configure conditional access policies for Azure AD protected device. I'm just going to give an overview. This is outside the scope of this video, and you can find additional information on the Microsoft website. So we go on endpoint security. We can see conditional access here at the bottom. If we click that, you can see that I have currently set up an Office Linux compliance, meaning that I have restricted access to the Office 365 application only to the Linux devices that are compliant to the policies that we have set. So if we click on this one, now the UI, because of the zoom, will be a little bit small, but if we scroll all the way down, you can see that we have control selected. And here we require all the devices to be marked as compliant. Now let's go back to Intune and let's check our compliance status. Let's do a manual refresh. And we can see that the status now is non-compliant. This is because I don't have any symbols in my password. So let's click here and we can view additional details about the errors that we have. We have a link to find more information, but let's actually now go and fix the problem. Go on settings, users, and we can go and input current password, new password, the symbol. Let's retype that again and change. Now let's go back to Intune and see if the device is compliant. Okay, now let's refresh the status and hopefully we will be compliant. The check is completed. And now we are compliant because we've added a digit to our password. Let's move on to the second topic of today's demo, and is custom compliance. Just like Windows and macOS, Intune supports custom compliance policies, which are a way for administrator to effectively extend the preset set of policies to whatever they would like. Custom compliance relies on two elements, a discovery script and a policy script. The discovery script is a script that effectively needs to that can perform a certain number of actions and then needs to output a specifically formatted string, which then the policy script will provide the rule to actually allow Intune to interpret it and understand whether the device is compliant or not. Generally, the custom compliance scripts are used to check running processes. So, for example, to make sure that your antivirus is running, like Microsoft Defender is running in the background. Or, for example, in the specific case of Ubuntu, making sure that the additional security features that are provided by Ubuntu Pro, the Canonical premium security subscription, are enabled. So as part of this demo, we are effectively going to do both. So we are going to show discovery script and a compliance script. And you can find a little bit more information on that on this temporary repository that I have created here. And it will be linked into the description below. So let's actually have a look at the compliance script before. So as you can see here, there is an initial part where I select a couple of processes. In this case, again, this is for demonstration purposes. We are checking whether Microsoft Edge and GNOME Shell are running. And what the script does is just output that to send information to write the information to the output as well as a log file. In the second part of the script, we are using the pro status JSON command to output the status of Ubuntu Pro. And then we will parse the JSON to understand whether a subscription is attached and whether certain security services are enabled. Now, Pro is a relatively large subscription, but the services that we would like to check for the specific use case, or the ones that are more directly applicable to desktops, are LivePatch, which is a virtual service that allows the kernel to be patched in the background as soon as a fix is available without the need for the machine to be rebooted. And then ESM Ops and ESM Infra, which extend the security support also to the entirety of Ubuntu universe, meaning that 23,000 packages are covered, including, for example, Python, Ruby, or Node.js. Now, let's actually open a terminal and run the script, and let's have a look at the output. In this case, we can see that we have the compliance script. There you go. So as you can see here, the output just shows that the two processes are running. But right now, since this is a new machine, we don't have a process description, so it's detached, and the services that we care about are disabled. At the same time, we can see that we have created the compliance log, and if we have a look at it, we can find the same information here, and so that the process description is not attached and the services are disabled. So let's now go ahead and configure the script in the Ubuntu portal. We need to go back to endpoint security, Then scroll down to device compliance, scripts, and while it loads, we need to copy and paste our script back here, create a Linux compliance script, and we can call it this one test script. Next, we copy, we paste the shell script that we just showed. Next, and we can create it. Now, as I mentioned before, we need to tell Intune which value it is expecting to mark the device as compliant. In order to do that, we have our policy script. And this is a JSON file that for each one of the different properties that we set is basically telling the backend which sort of type of output is expecting. So if we go back here, we can see that in the previous terminal, we were showing an output, and that's the same one that we are configuring here. Together with that, we can show more information URL and a human readable description. So what you see here is the message that the Intune client will display in the case of non-compliance. So now let's go and create our custom compliance policy. We need to go back to devices, Linux, compliance policy. Here we can see the password strength one, which we have previously created, and create a new one. And we can call it running services and raw. Okay, click next. Need to add settings. In our case, it is a custom compliance script, and we are going to require custom compliance. We go back here. We need to select the script, the one that we have previously added, maybe this one. And we need to select a rules file. So in this case, the JSON one that we showed before. Select it. We'll show here. Click on next. As before, we are marking the device as non-compliant immediately, and we can also configure the system to send an email to a user. Next, let's add all users, all devices. Click on next. We can review our policy, and then click create. Now let's go back to Intune and check the status of the device. So as you can see, the status is now non-compliant. Let's run a refresh in the background. We can view the issues. And as you can see here in this box, we are seeing messages that we discovered, that we configured into the JSON file. So if we quickly go back to that, you can see that we configured application display that Pro is not enabled, and a user-friendly message to help resolve the problem. So now let's open a terminal window and let's actually attach Ubuntu Pro. Okay, so let's use my token to configure Ubuntu Pro. Let's input our new password with the symbol. Now, Pro service is adding the token and adding the additional repositories and enabling live patch. The command will soon output the status of the subscription. And as we can see here, we have ESM apps, ESM infra, and live patch all enabled. This means that if we run we go back to Intune and refresh the compliant status, we should be compliant. Let's click on refresh. And now we are compliant. Let's actually understand why this is happening and what's the difference in the output. So as we saw before, when we previously run the command, we had this output. So let's rerun the command again and see what we get out right now. So right now we see that the Pro subscription is attached, live patch is enabled, same as ESM apps and infra, which are fundamentally the values that we expect here to get. So touched and enabled. So thanks a lot for watching this video. We will add a set of useful links to the documentation or to our blog posts in the video description. And feel free to contact us should you have any questions. Thank you for watching.